Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick, and we're here for a cool, short topic again today, a comparison of the 2019 and 2023 Ravens and kind of a positional basis, position group basis. Here to do that with us is Sean Asher. Sean, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. We got the big news of Mark Andrews coming back. That's pretty exciting. And, Kyle Hamilton making his first team All-Pro appearance in year 2. So that's an exciting day for Ravens fans for sure.
It is. Patrick Queen, a second team All-Pro, which is, I think, pretty extraordinary and probably a good thing for the Ravens with him going into free agency. Tyler Linderbaum, Kevin Zeitler remain snubbed on the offensive line in terms of guys who didn't make it either to the Pro Bowl. Well, Linderbaum made the Pro Bowl, but did not. Neither of them was chosen even as a second team All-Pro.
Yeah. I'm really hoping that Patrick Queen selection as second team really gets us that third round comp pick. Now I'm hoping that moves the needle and gets us there.
Pretty good chance. I'd say a pretty good chance. A lot of teams out there need an inside linebacker, and he does a lot of things well. And we wish him the best in his new NFC career.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that'll be terrific. But we're here to talk about the 2019 versus 2023 Ravens and compare those two teams. And obviously that the 19 team was a very, very special team, which went 14-2. Set all sorts of records for offense, which I'm sure we'll get into. The 2023 team, a remarkable DVOA team, and I've been calling it DVOA or DVOA as mood suits me. But we had a separate show we just recorded yesterday with Aaron Schatz on, where he talked about all of the special 2023 Ravens DVOA thresholds that they hit. Great individual games from Lamar Jackson, great season from Keaton Mitchell, and a great performance by the team overall for the whole season, which makes them the 5th best team since 1981 of the all DVOA era. He thinks that this is a team, if they win the Super Bowl, will be thought of as one of the greatest of all time. So lofty goals, but Sean, let's you take it away and tell us how you'd like to go about comparing the 19 and 23 teams.
So I think it started in quarter 3 of the Miami game. We're the game's kind of already over. We're starting to think about pulling guys, and people are even mad that Lamar's still in the game. And it's well, really, there's still enough time for Miami to come back. But Twitter was just already on fire about oh, you can't rest people next week, and the bye and the rust, and it's going to be 2019 all over again. So I immediately thought okay, let's dissect this and let's talk about some of the differences, and sent you the message to figure out how do we record something about that. So one of the things that I, really started to look at was the team, and the first thing that kind of pops to head is the experience level and the different types of playmakers and some of the schemes. So I guess we can start with positional breakdowns and how the positions are different from year to year.
Sure, let's do it.
Yeah. So the first thing, Lamar is now 26 years old. He's not a 22-year-old kid anymore. He's a little bit grown. Since that Tennessee loss in 2019, Lamar's played 55 games. That's a lot of experience, and 1,391 pass completions since that game. So, age is the best teacher, and Lamar's got a lot of that nowadays.
All right. So I if we're comparing the two positions, like 2019 Lamar versus 2023 Lamar, the first thing I'd say is that Lamar's 2019 season remains among the greatest in NFL history. So I don't think it's fair. I don't think it was ever fair for Ravens to expect that he'd be repeating this, or a lot of the comments I would see, which is he's only going to get better. He probably has improved his game in some ways. The league was totally unready to react to who he was in 2019. They've figured some things out. They've optimized some things about how to work against Lamar Jackson. So he can be better and still not be as good statistically. And that's, I believe, what has happened now relative to 2023, for example.
Absolutely. I remember in 2019, week in and week out, your offensive breakdowns, and folks, you can't expect this year after year. This, you just can't. And I remember thinking oh yeah, that's probably true. You he can't do this for the next 10 years of his career, and like it's just not gonna be sustainable. Statistically speaking, you just can't have that huge of a presence that high for that long. So yeah, I was able to soak it in a little bit better with your forewarnings back then about what was to come. But it's hard to compare Lamar from then and now without really thinking about the scheme and the progress that he's made in the different aspects of his game. So like, is he the same guy, and is he as electric in the run game? And do we have the highlight reel this year about him breaking tackles and making people miss? Do we have that same thing? No, but it's just changed a lot, and it's progressed a lot. I think he always had the accuracy in him, but it was a consistency thing. And we all said wide receivers. So there's a lot of different change in what we've seen from Lamar, that it's different, but there's also a lot of pros to be found in the change. And it's not just a statistical regression. There's still a lot of positive progressions in there as well.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly with that. The one thing I would say 2019 Lamar was much better at was making the other players on the field better. He was at the peak of his ability to do that. Roman's scheme was terrific at bringing that out, particularly when other teams didn't know what they were doing in facing it. And that really was special.
Especially with the like we always point to, the ability to read leverage. Like, that season, his specific skill set and his ability were able to shine a little bit better, whereas now he's a little bit more of a passer. It takes the collaboration between him and the other person to be on the same page about when a play's breaking down, when the pocket's breaking down, when I need to jump off this route and just start working back towards the middle or find an open zone. It's a lot more difficult for him to make those big plays when it's more in the passing game, and it requires another person to be able to enhance his skill set that way.
Yeah, I remember Coach Evans of Sip the Tally Films. By the way, that's a channel really worth checking out if you haven't done it so far. Had a great comment about it that I'd like to quote. Is when he loses his speed a little bit, and Lamar Jackson has undeniably lost some speed from when he was a rookie. He's gained weight, and he I think a lot of it is preservational in nature. But what Coach would say is when he loses his speed, he'll become Russell Wilson. Now, that didn't used to be the kind of insult it seems to be right now. But at the time when he said it, it was a really positive thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, another thing I'd like to point to about Lamar and the quarterback position is the mentality that's in it's subjective. It's super subjective. I can't remember every interview and every player quote that, but it seemed like looking back in 2019, it was a lot of just fun for the guy, and the interviewer would ask a question about, what do you think about Orlando Brown? And you just heap praise. And then, like, I love this team. Everything's, we're having fun. We're playing ball. This is great. But now the interviews are a lot more about the mindset. And it's like, the famous Marcus Peters quote from when the Rams were going to the Super Bowl, "We ain't done yet." And like, that's kind of the mentality that Lamar has in all of the interviews now. It's like, this is great. And like, you watch the Wired and teams, the, offensive lineman, it doesn't really tell you the context of what's happening, but he's like, chill, we're not done yet. This game's not over yet. And it's very much more laser focused on the winning and staying locked in, as opposed to like going out there and having fun and doing his thing and just letting it rip.
Yeah, that level of maturity, I hope, will serve him well as he rolls through this, because the Ravens are much more likely to face adversity during this postseason that they really never did during the entire regular season. I mean, okay, they had some close games at the end of losing 3 of them early in the season. They should have won all of them. But did they ever really face any sort of meaningful adversity? They beat the crap out of the good teams they faced. They beat 10 teams who had winning records. The 5 teams who were 3 games over 500 they faced, they beat them all by 2 touchdowns or more. It's just, this has been the most one-sided season of football I've ever witnessed by a Baltimore team. But anyway, I think that Lamar's focus, and I think he may be taking his cues in part from Roquan on the defense, because Roquan has a complete focus, and we can get to that when we talk about the defense, but I've been really impressed by that.
I'm hoping the only adversity that we face is like a lighting issue in the Super Bowl. Like I'm hoping that'd be great. Yeah.
Let's move on to running back.
Yep. So running back 2019, we had Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, Mark Ingram. 2023, we got Justice Hill, Gus Edwards. We have Melvin Gordon and Dalvin Cook. Right now, I'd say that I'd give the advantage to the 2019 squad. Mark Ingram was phenomenal at the mesh point, and there was never any fumbling issues. There was never nope, I'm taking the ball now. There was none of that. And Mark always said, just pull it hard, rip it out. Yeah. So
that's exactly the point I was just about to make, but you got it. But the reason the Ravens ran pistol that year for something like 46% of their snaps. So they ran it a plurality, not quite a majority, but it was their most common formation they try and run the football out of. Is because that mesh point with Ingram was so good. And in the years since, we've seen them bring in a bunch of veteran backs. They won't say specifically that's the case, but I believe it's a case of them trying to recreate mesh point understanding and not wanting to take risk on younger, faster players, which is proven to be, to my opinion, much to their detriment. And now when they finally caught lightning in a bottle with Mitchell, they've got something special and different.
I can't remember what game it was. It was recently, the last two or three, not the last one because Lamar didn't play, but I remember a jet sweep motion with, I think it was Zay Flowers.
Yes.
And it looked like Lamar wanted to keep that ball, and Zay was just like, nope, I'm taking it, I'm going. And to your point, like, it takes a veteran understanding of like seeing how it's breaking down in front of you to be able to even understand, like, okay, is there a chance Lamar wants this ball right now, as opposed to like just being narrow focused on where's the hole, where's my blocks going to be, and trying to follow that. It really takes a lot of experience. So it definitely makes sense that they're looking for the vets for that.
That was the game-winning touchdown, a game-sealing touchdown, I should say, at San Diego. So they had a mild 13-10 lead. They needed a first down very badly. Jet sweep, Zay Flowers seemed like there was actual disagreement at the match point, but Flowers was not letting it go, and he scored when he should have probably knelt, but he definitely got the job done.
Yep. So again, wash. If Dalvin Cook can come back and he's the Minnesota Dalvin Cook, then maybe it's a wash between the two. But right now, without really knowing what we have in Dalvin Cook, I'd have to give the advantage to the 2019 squad.
And I notice you left Keaton Mitchell on this list, so you're kind of looking prospectively at how the Ravens will be in the playoffs relative to 2019.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Because if you included 2019, 2023. Keaton Mitchell on here and just compared him to Ingram directly, I'm not sure if I'd want Mitchell's 47 carries or everything Ingram did for the whole season, because Mitchell, unbelievable weapon for the Titans.
I mean, I can't remember seeing a player that fast. Like Chris Johnson was that fast, but like it was very linear. It was like a one cut and then linear speed. It wasn't, I'm going to run around your angles that you're trying to take. It's just unreal how fast Keaton Mitchell was.
You make exactly the comparison. I think about football a lot when I'm walking the dog and whatnot. And one of the things that reminds me of that I thought of is that 2008 Tennessee team who lost in the playoffs to the Ravens. It was the loss of CJ2K hamstrung that Tennessee offense, and the Ravens, who had a great defense, were able to pretty much shut them down the rest of the game with several turnovers. I'm thinking this could be the Achilles of the 2023 Ravens, is not having Keaton Mitchell. Absolutely enormous injury. I think, given the emergence of Isaiah Likely, I think you could point to that injury as being maybe even more severe than Mark Andrews. And I know that's sacrilege in this town a lot of ways, but incredibly important player.
Yeah, we love our tight ends. They're number one always. Yeah, I totally agree though. I mean, it's I think the game's changed a lot, and a lot of the concepts that they're doing, the pick plays from the wide receivers or tight ends to get the running back out wide to beat around that block. It's working out really well with Justice Hill, but if Justice Hill goes down, that's going to be brutal. So, anyway.
Let's move on to the wide receivers if we can.
Yep. So 2019 wide receivers. This is a great point that everybody loves talking about on Twitter about Lamar's all-pro season. And these are the wide receivers we had. They are Miles Boykin, Marquise Brown, Chris Moore, Seth Roberts, Jaleel Scott, Willie Snead, and DeAnthony Thomas. I think he was just a kick returner and punt returner that year. I don't think he saw very many wide receiver snaps.
He's listed as a running back on this team. I was looking at this name and I didn't remember. I'm like, you just made that up, did you? Know,
it's on Pro Football Reference that he's a wide receiver, but maybe it's just pure special teams. Oh, maybe I got it wrong then. Maybe
he's listed. He has receiving stats, but he's listed as a running back there. Anyway,
that's probably why I saw that.
He's listed as a wide receiver in his time, maybe with the Chiefs. Otherwise, and he's listed as. This is interesting because he's listed as a running back every year of his career. He's got receiving, he's got rushing. That's interesting. I honestly do not know what this is. This is a very small guy, 5'8", 176. If you remember who DeAnthony Thomas was, DM me on Twitter and let me know. But that's interesting player.
Yeah. So in 2023, I think we've got a far superior squad. Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, OBJ, Nelson Aguilar coming out with a resurgence year. And then, our quote unquote backups at wide receiver are Laquan Treadwell, which was a first round pick, and Tylan Wallace, who has, made some plays for this team. And the depth of the 2023 squad, not just the depth, but the talent across the board is just far, far, far superior to the 2019 squad.
I don't know how Laquan Treadwell is in the locker room. It would probably be difficult for someone with his pedigree to come in. He's been in the league, 8 years or something now, to come into a team like this, accept a practice call, squad role. And he's effectively, there's a line I love, sacrifice himself at the altar of dignity in terms of his thing to earn a ring this year.
Yep,
something that is, if he's got anything to say, this would not be the time to say it. I'm sure he'll get a ring for his participation anyway, but he can be on the sidelines for the Super Bowl or maybe not if he was deactivating it. Now Treadwell's been now activated at the 53. Is that correct? I believe that's true.
I believe so. I can't keep up with EDC's transactions, man. I don't, who in that building can keep up with how he masters and manipulates that roster week in and week out.
Another good reason though why Lamar's 2019 was so great was working with guys like Seth Roberts. Chris Moore had not a terrible year that year. I think he caught something like 19 out of 26 balls or something in one of his better years. But it's not a lot of talent to be working with it. Marquise Brown and the rest and the field are your guys.
And I think that was Marquise's first fully healthy year, right? That was his sophomore season. The rookie season, he came in with the Liz Frank injury. So after
that was number
season,
one. That was his rookie year. 19.
Oh, that was his rookie year. Okay, yeah. So even that, I mean, our best wide receivers is working with coming off a Liz Frank surgery and had screws in his foot. That's pretty brutal. So, yeah, just clear advantage to the 2023 squad headed into the playoffs.
It's definitely the thing about the offense that is significantly better in 19. Let's move on to the tight ends.
Yep. So 2019, Andrews, Boyle, and Hurst. And 2023, we've got Likely, Kolar, and Andrews. Originally, when I typed this up, we didn't have Andrews. Now we have Andrews back. That's pretty exciting. When I look at this one, it's kind of hard to lean either way. I tend to try to call this a wash. Andrews is coming back. So, is Andrews a little bit less than he was in 2019? Probably age, and he's coming off of the foot injury. Who knows how severe? Who knows what version of him we're going to get? If it's 80% of what he was before, who really knows? When I look at Likely versus Hurst, I'm taking Likely. After since Andrews' injuries, Likely has proven to be pretty consistent, been a solid route runner, had speed, had burst. The one-handed catch that he had, can't remember who it was against, but down near the red zone, one-handed catch, and then just muscled his way into the end zone. Yeah, against Miami. Yep, you're right. And then, Boyle for the 2019 season provided way more value than Kolar is providing to this roster today. But, based off of what this roster and what this scheme needs, Kolar could end up being more important than Boyle in terms of like an injury perspective or something. So to me, it's kind of a wash, but I could see pointing it as a 2019 squad is better.
Okay, I would say there's no doubt about it. The 2019 squad is better, and in particular, if we're looking forward to the playoffs, the big edge for 2019 is Andrews, and I don't care whether you do it Andrews versus Andrews or Andrews versus who likely is right now. The quarterback rating throwing to Andrews that year was 133. Andrews with increased workload each year, and let me make sure I had that correct because I think maybe 2018 I'm thinking of, but I thought it might have been Boyle actually is the guy who was 133 throwing to him.
Wow.
Get to this really quickly here. Let's see, advanced receiving and rushing. Yeah, okay. So for Andrews, the ratings by year throwing to him, and this is from PFR, and the targets would differ if you look on PFF, so the ratings might be slightly different. 124.7 in 2018 when he set the record for yards per target. 2019, 114.0. Then 112.0 in 20, 92.5 in 21, 90.8 in 22, and back up to 133.5 in 2023, which, by the way, the big thing, 0 interceptions throwing to Mark Andrews this season and 9 in 2021. I am going to reverse myself again on this because I had no idea he was having that kind of a year in terms of passer rating to him. So I'd say Andrews 23 has been more valuable even with missed games. But if we're looking prospectively, is it fair? We don't have an idea if Andrews is going to be back or not.
Yeah, right. We don't know if we're getting 50% of Mark Andrews or if we're getting 80% or what that even looks like. One of the things that I've been thrown out there, and I'm curious to get your take on it, is, as Andrews is coming back and folded back into this offense, I really think that it behooves the Ravens to leave Likely exactly where he's at and keep asking him to do the same thing he's been doing and find the more creative and new ways to fold Andrews into it. I say that because we've had Mark Andrews and Likely for 2 years now. I think this is his sophomore year for Likely. And it never seemed like we could get the two on the field at the same time and both of them clicking. And, for whatever reason, maybe it's just because Likely's younger and it's harder to get consistent in a backup role or a secondary tight end option, or, it doesn't have the same skill set that Andrews does. But with Andrews' veteran savvy and his deep understanding of how to get open, how to find the spaces in the zones and what Lamar's looking for, it would seem like it's a better fit to kind of make Andrews the tight end number 2 and allow him to fold himself into the more creative and dynamic ways and leave Likely exactly where he's at.
I absolutely love that idea. I think that makes all kinds of sense in terms of how it's done. And I think they're going to have Andrews on a pitch count anyway. So one of the things you could do if they have truly overlapping skill sets where, these guys both do pretty much the same thing. They both want to be flex. They both want to get a nice clean release from the line of scrimmage. If that's the case, that's still okay. And the Ravens can hopefully use them to for 100% of snaps in aggregate. So you have some overlapping snaps probably that will still occur where they both have more blocking responsibilities anyway because you have a 2 tight end set, and they'll have a lot of Andrews snaps and a lot of Likely snaps as the primary tight end receiver. And I think that can work because I think we're going to see a 40 to 60% usage of Mark Andrews when he comes back and not 85% again.
I'm sure that this is the most exciting problem Monken has had in a while. How do we do this effectively and efficiently without deteriorating anything that we have now? And, I'm sure he's pounding a ton of midnight oil between trying to figure that out, prep for the next game, and the interviews that he's gotten requested for.
Yeah. All right, outstanding, and I thank you for bringing up the Andrews comparison and whatnot because I had not looked this year to see just what kind of year Andrews is having. 2 years ago, only in 2021, when the ball was just being fed to Andrews out of necessity, a lot of contested catches and whatnot, 9 interceptions thrown to Andrews. So
Wow.
0 this year, and that's absolutely terrific. Some of that is probably deserved by Andrews, that he's being more cognizant about when to tip the ball, and a lot of it's obviously due to Lamar not throwing balls into traffic because Andrews is the only choice out there.
Yeah, and I think, to not to add more time and more to that point, it's been fascinating to watch Lamar develop and read the field a little bit differently without Andrews this year. I hate to wish think that the Andrews injury was a good thing in any way, shape, or form, but it's really been fascinating to see Lamar's progression when he doesn't have that safety blanket, that security blanket.
Positive byproduct of a bad situation. It's one of the few cases where the Ravens' injury lemons can be turned into a little bit of lemonade, and the development of Isaiah Likely has, in some ways, really softened the blow of losing Mark Andrews.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's move on to the offensive line.
All right, so offensive line. We had from left to right, we had Stanley left tackle, Bozeman left guard. McCary, I think, was the starter for that Tennessee game because I'm pretty sure Skura got hurt right before the playoffs. I can't remember when. I tried to go look it up.
The Rams game.
The Rams game, yep. Yanda at right guard, the legendary Marshall Yanda, and then Orlando Brown Jr. at right tackle. The backups for that squad was Ben Powers, young Ben Powers. I think he took over left guard shortly after that, maybe the next season or the season after. And then the backup tackles were James Hurst and Andre Smith. For 2023, left to right, we all know it's Stanley, Simpson, Linderbaum, Zeitler, and Moses. And our other backups are McCary, Cleveland, Ben Cleveland. From starter and quality and what we got from the offensive line in 2019, it's far, far superior.
Yep. I
think that the backups that we have this year are far superior than what we had. So it's clear that 2019 was much better, but I think it's a little bit closer just because of the quality of the depth of the backups that we have right now. And, we've seen injuries happen along this offensive line. If one of these guys goes down, I don't worry that our chances for winning a Super Bowl are completely busted. I really don't this year.
Completely agree. I mean, obviously, the starting tackle play, in particular from Stanley, has been one of the bugaboos. It's one of the things going into the postseason that gives real reason for concern. I think if I went along the starting line, though, I would say that every single 2019 starter, with the exception of Linderbaum, was better. Yep. Sorry, with the exception of McCary-Skura combination, and I had a lot of love for Skura when he was playing with the team, and McCary was a decent replacement at center, but Linderbaum's been a lot better this year. Zeitler was a near Pro Bowler and a snub Pro Bowler. Yanda was a no doubt about it all Pro. And it shouldn't be a snub to Zeitler in that particular comparison. He's having a great year, though, and he really did get screwed this year in terms of his Pro Bowl and all Pro voting.
Yeah, not a lot of guards make it into the Hall of Fame, but I have to imagine Yanda makes it in there one day. I have to imagine.
I think it's a sure thing, given what happened. I think I'm not 100% sure he'll be a first ballot player, but there will be pressure to make him a first ballot player. And the thing that is, by the way, has changed the game in terms for guards and getting the Hall of Fame is PFF. PFF is providing, weekly updates on these things where these stodgy old cigar smoking, MVP, sorry, not MVP voters, all pro voters would be working off 5 and 7 year old information for their cards. Like it's not.
Oh, well, he was good back then, 6 years ago, and now he's still making some pancakes. So yeah, keep it.
Exactly. It ain't broke. And you did see a lot of multi-year all pro and Pro Bowl players. Now it switches around much more from year to year, which I think is healthy and good and more informed, in terms of what's going on. But I one of the big ones is Bozeman versus Simpson, and Bozeman provided a tremendous value as a puller for that team and really, really understood what he was doing in that regard. That's an area where Simpson's had a lot of difficulty. Simpson probably is as good a pass blocker. Simpson gets penalized a ton, and that's really his big negative. So. And I
think you said once that Bozeman had the record for pulls in a game, right?
Yeah.
Bozeman. Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah, it's and it was not for a Ravens game that I've scored. So those go back to 2005, and it was in the mid 20s. I want to say like 24, 25 in that range that he had in a single game. Which, boy, that had to be a lot of fun to just roll over an opponent with 25 pulls in one game.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. So yeah, I think 2019 overall, it's a much better line. It's but I think the depth this year is better than what we had in 2019.
And we're looking at the offensive unit as a whole. You put the 2019 team ahead, or you look at the receivers and say the 2023 team is ahead. How do you rate the two?
Well, I mean, I think we can get into schematically now about it and finish the offense on the schematic portion of it. In 2019, it was predicated on the run and using different run looks. Play action passing game would become a part of the game plan, but it was all predicated on the run. This year, Monken finds multiple ways that he can attack. And, I think we get off to some slower starts, or there's some drives that I wish we had gotten those earlier leads quicker. But there's kind of a process that you can see with Monken and trying to figure out how the defense is responding and how to continue to attack. Whereas it seemed like Greg Roman's game plan was like, we're going to pound the ball and we're going to find the way to pound the ball on the ground and we're going to figure it out and then we're going to get up to a big win. Whereas Monken's a little bit more, it seems like, at least to me, he's a little bit more receptive to what the defense is doing and has a couple different avenues to go and attack on it. A couple stats to point to there. In 2019, Lamar rushed for 1,206 yards of his 4,333 yards from scrimmage. So 28% of his yards came from the run. This year, he's rushed for 821 of his 4,499 yards from scrimmage. So 18%. So a lot more yards from Lamar coming from the passing game. And, we're able to find different ways to attack defenses through the pass instead of just forcing the run.
I think it's fair to talk about the adaptability of the team and the 23 team as being an asset that doesn't show outside of the stats that I would contend really matter most. And the two that are the big ones for the 2019 Ravens offense. Number one is points per drive, and that team was unbelievable. 3.08 points per drive. The current Ravens team, by the way, is at 2.48 points per drive. I was hoping they'd get back to about 2.6. They fell a little short of that, but honestly, the whole league is down in terms of offense. So by about 0.2 of a point per drive since 2019, if I recall correctly. So they're in the right range. They're in the range where their defense can help them win a championship. This is an extremely balanced team we'll get into in a second. But in terms of pure offensive power, that 2019 team beats them all. That's component number one. Component number two, they did it for nothing. They did it for literally almost no cap space spent on the entire offense. Is the most productive offense per cap dollar spent you will ever see. There will never be another like it in football. It's whenever people make graphs of this, the Ravens are such an outlier, they almost don't fit on the chart. Or all the other teams appear to be squinched into just a small area because the chart had to be expanded so much to get the Ravens in there.
So, yeah, I mean, all of that considered, I think with the difference of scheme, the difference of personnel, quarterbacks, it's slightly down, somewhat of a wash. The running backs is down. The wide receivers are way up. The tight ends could be a wash depending on how you look at it, or it could be a little bit down, and the offensive line down. I think the overall offense is more prepared for this playoff run. They have multiple different ways to attack and beat defenses. They have a lot of different game plans and a lot of different options on ways that they can go to find efficiency for the offense.
It's a great point. Very well stated. Completely agree, by the way, that even though this team is not as great offensively, they're better prepared to adapt to what they may face in the playoffs here. And it was just a very unfortunate set of circumstances, but also a very unfortunate timing on finding an opponent who could adapt to them. in the playoffs in 2019. And unfortunately, they had found just the same thing in the previous year. Lamar went 6-1 to finish the regular season. They faced the Chargers in the playoffs, and the Chargers put 7 defensive backs on the field for almost every single play.
Yep.
They adapted. And it's just unfortunate, but that's who it came to. I think this Ravens team much more suited to deal with that.
Yep.
Let's flip over the defense now.
Alrighty. Yep. So defense, we'll start with defensive line. 2019, we had Justin Ellis. I think he was one of the ones that was signed off to the street. So was Domata Peko. We had Michael Pierce, which I didn't even remember that we had him that year.
Oh, really? Okay.
Pro Football Reference. I don't know why it slipped my mind. I guess I'm just assuming that with us signing Peko and Ellis off the street, that how did I forget that we had Michael Pierce there and Brandon Williams was healthy all year. So we also had Jihad Word, which was counted as a defensive line. He's edge / outside linebacker / DL. I know he lined up in the middle a lot on dime looks or nickel looks. I guess it was his I guess it was Wink Martindale's NASCAR package, I guess,
exactly.
Putting Word in there. And then Chris Wormley. And then in 2023, we've got Travis Jones, Justin Matabike, Michael Pierce again, Brent Urban, and Broderick Washington. To me, it's kind of based on.
If you found a $100 bill on the ground, you wouldn't walk past it. So don't pass up a chance at easy cash with MyBookie. MyBookie has the biggest online selection of odds and contests to fill all your sports betting needs, anytime, anywhere, so you can turn that sports knowledge into cash in your wallet. Bet on the NFL, college bowl games, or play for your share of big cash prizes in the weekly blackjack tournaments. And if you've been waiting for the right time to get in on the action, that time is now. Make your winning move today. Sign up at MyBookie and use the promo code RAVENS to claim your deposit match. Redeemable up to $1,000. Again, that's promo code RAVENS to claim your bonus. Experience the thrill of sports betting right from the comfort of your home. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.
Off of the scheme, but this defensive line, I think, is better suited than the 2019 playoffs.
I would agree for a couple of reasons. First of all, mix of body types in 2023 is much better. There's a 4 nose tackle team from 2019. The reason that happened, by the way, is they lost defensive linemen as the season was going on. They kept losing Brandon Williams for a game here, a game there. Michael Pierce missed 2 games or 3 games. Forget which it was. It might have been only 2 games. But anyway, they needed replacements. They had to go to the street and they had to get nose tackles because that's what's available. Grade 3 techs aren't available on the street. I give Ozzie and DaCosta, however they were working at the time, tremendous. Actually, let's see. 18 draft was Ozzie's last. This is 19. This is all DaCosta. Give him tremendous credit for rebuilding this defense on the fly. And it's nowhere is it more prominent than on the defensive line where they went to this. You mentioned the NASCAR package. I call it race car when they used 4 outside linebackers and oftentimes 1 down lineman, but sometimes none.
Yep.
They played that package more than they played base in 2019. Yep. So they played base about 10-point-something% of the time, and they played the race car package over 13% of the time.
Yep.
So really a outstanding year, honestly, also of adjustment from Wink Martindale to the personnel he had and really getting the most out of them.
I think to your point, Ravens in 2019 were just building insurmountable lead off the rip, and it was a lot easier for Wink Martindale to put that race car package. I think I called it NASCAR because Madden back in the day when the Giants did it with Justin Tuck, Osi Umenyiora, they also had JPP. They called it NASCAR and Madden, that formation. So I think that's why that's kind of stuck with me. That's funny.
I came up with race car on my own, and it's been pointed out to me that I've popularized the term without getting approval from the street for that. I've also, the other one I use is jumbo nickel. It's not anybody else's terminology for it. A lot of other teams call it penny, but the problem with that calling a penny is it confuses most fans because it breaks the coinage rules of any kind of nickel has five defensive backs.
And I don't I don't know if it's just because I've been listening to you so long, but I feel like I think Madden also called it jumbo nickel, or it's just because I've been listening since you've been on the radio. I can't remember.
Okay, I think they may have called it 3-3-5 nickel,
Yeah.
which would be another possible term for it. But penny is often the term because people want to have something quick to say, where you give up an inside linebacker, put an extra guy on the defensive line, and you have still 5 defensive backs. What is characterized by is your safeties really have to know how to run fit for your linebackers.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, good thing we've got that right, but we'll get there.
All right, so let's move on. We'll move on to the linebackers.
Yep. So linebackers. So I think I started with outside linebackers, but we'll cover inside at the same time. So outside in 2019 was Bowser, Ferguson, and Judon. And in 2023, we've got Clowney, Jeremiah Moon, Owe, Robinson, and Van Noy outside. And then inside in 2019, we had Chris Board, Josh Bynes coming off the street. LJ Fort came off the street too. Yep. Patrick Owasso inside. And then inside this year, we've got Delshon Phillips. I don't know if he got put on IR, if he's still hurt. I don't know. I think he's still on the roster right now.
As far as I know.
Yeah. So Delshon Phillips, Patrick Queen, Roquan Smith, and Trenton Simpson, which had a fantastic game against the Steelers. So to me, it's so clear and obvious that the linebacking unit as a whole, from pretty much top to bottom in 2023, is far superior.
Okay, I think it is, and it's largely a question of Roquan, but I'll give you 2 reasons why it might not be in some ways. And the first is that their outside linebackers, although this team has generated a ton of sacks, and there's all this complementary pressure being created by having guys who can get first pressure but can also clean up like nobody's business. You have that from the outside coming in. Clowney's good with it. Van Noy is a good first pressure guy. Matabike's been an unbelievable cleanup guy this year. So they have a wonderful combination, the pass rush. The 2019 team did it primarily with schematic deception. So a big part of that was having the combination of Bowser, who is, Bowser is not thought of well in this town right now, which is a very unfortunate end to his time here. But also Matt Judon, either of them could drop to coverage. Bowser was the best in the NFL at doing it, and Judon was a pretty damn close second in terms of being guys. So you had a lot of pass rush flexibility created by your outside linebackers there that fueled that. That's reason number 1. Let you respond to that, and I'll get to reason number 2.
It's very interesting because, the flexibility that Bowser and Judon had, I remember seeing, and maybe it's an illusion, and I don't know how to find the stat for delay of game or timeouts called because quarterbacks didn't know who was coming and who was not coming. But to your point, it was a lot of schematic pressure that was sent to be able to facilitate those pieces working.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there definitely was a lot of that. The other point I'll make here, and this is an area where I think the Ravens will return, is the 2019 team played 42.2% dime, or over 42%. I'm sorry, I always confuse myself when I'm talking about it, including the playoffs or not, but it's over 42%. So anyway, that team, first of all, was in position to play a lot of dime and would just start doing it at the beginning of the fourth quarter, regardless of opposing personnel package, because they weren't too concerned about the run. But they would also run it out there on third down exclusively. As if it's 3rd and 6 or more, you're getting the dime look. Just like in 2000, if you were 3rd and 4 or more, you got the quarter from the Ravens, which was it was bizarre in some ways to see them playing that 31 quarter. But they played a standard 4-1 dime back then. One inside linebacker, four down linemen, and then six guys. And we had Chuck Clark at the peak of his ability playing dime back and giving the greatest dime season in Ravens history, just beating the guy who had done it the previous year, and Anthony Levine. That dime package was extremely powerful. And what you get from Patrick Queen, it's of different quality and a different advantages than what we got from the dime package. And I think that what we're going to see is we get better coverage with Queen not in the lineup and a dime back instead. We get not as much pass rush, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay making that sacrifice because I think you need the coverage probably a little bit more. But more than anything, you get it all put together, that platoon, at a third of the price that you'd otherwise pay for Queen.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a lot easier to find than the unicorn. It is so much easier to find the guy like, okay, you can do this really well. And okay, you can do this really well. Like you can rush, you can play the run really well. You can cover really well. You guys are just flipping. Like it's so much easier to find somebody that can do one or two things really well than trying to find anybody that can do all the things at even 80%,
Yeah. And that has shown up when Ravens inside linebackers have been hurt in the past. Anytime they were without Ray Lewis, they were pretty much screwed. Anytime they were without C.J. Mosley, they were pretty much screwed. So they had to do it. This 2019 team was very strange, though, in the case that their weak side linebacker in Fort and Bynes both contributed stuff against the pass, but they're unbelievable finds for their specific responsibilities against the run as well.
Yep. Absolutely, just on the street. And like I don't know every player on every team. I definitely don't. I try to keep up and try to know who's who and who we're facing and who the matchups are going to be each week. But LJ Fort was just absolutely fantastic that year, and it was a no-brainer to re-sign him. It sucked that he got the injury after that, because it was such an incredible find for what we were asking him to do. It was incredibly powerful. But overall, I think the linebackers really get a big advantage this year, and you're probably right. It's probably a lot of it has to do with Roquan, but I can't foresee any team trying to take advantage of this defense in the way that Tennessee did in 2019. I can't see it happening,
right,
based off of what teams are left in the playoffs and who we may face, all of the teams that are left, like any combination. I can't see it happening.
Yeah. The Pittsburgh Steelers are the one team that really completely depends on the run at this time. Miami can do it. The Ravens, just beat them pretty handily, but in a lot of ways, I still fear them as much as any other offense. But Pittsburgh is a big power tackle breaking team, and that does scare me a little bit with lighter boxes that they could be effective. But we just saw them; it was a lousy condition, so it's hard to really judge what happened. But they controlled the football very effectively. They ran the ball more effectively than a 4.0 yards per carry would tell you.
Yeah,
I think they were actually better than that. But just seeing things, I obviously it's against backups. So am I really that concerned about it? No,
that's true.
But,
yeah. It was a solid data point for me, that game, and in who we had on the field and what was able to be produced with that combination. Because when I go back and I look and I see Trenton Simpson showed some flashes, but you're talking about a rookie in the playoffs, he could get exposed really quickly. So if you put Patrick Queen back there and you put Roquan back there, I don't have any insecurities about that combination at all.
And would you have any insecurity about if Queen were to get hurt during the playoffs, and God forbid that anything happens injury-wise to this Ravens team when things are really going well, but that Simpson couldn't go in and play 2 downs or play a platoon role or do whatever would be necessary?
I feel good about him doing a platoon role. Yeah. Especially Malik Harrison on the rundowns and, bringing in Trenton Simpson when you need the speed or any other type of flexibility, and converting that role to a dime role, because now we have all the cornerbacks and we have everything we need to be able to convert to dime on the fly if we need to. We have enough depth.
The funny thing is, I don't know who would play dime for this Ravens team right now because they're really shorthanded at safety. And so I guess it might be Adams. You could move up. Stone is not really the right guy to move up into the box. Stone and Williams are back end guys. Hamilton, you want at slot, but maybe you might decide that on those dimes you put Mollett at slot and you move Hamilton over to dime.
Stevens and Darby, Marlin in slot, and then Hamilton and dime, and keep your back end safeties the same. I mean, you run the risk of somebody getting hurt on that play, because if you lose either one of the 3 safeties when you got all 3 of them on the field like that, you're running a risk. But I don't know that we've seen Hamilton play dime, but I haven't seen anything that says he couldn't do it.
Well, he has played a lot of upfront alignments where he's not exactly lined up over slot. He's more like a third linebacker that's in there trying to play on some earlier running downs against some of the heavier teams. I'm thinking like Cleveland, and who else am I thinking about that he had done that with? But anyway, I think they are fairly adaptable to that, and Hamilton seems to be able to go wherever he needs to go and play well.
Yeah, absolutely incredible for that guy. Second year. We're just looking at the second year. Do you have any fears about like the same thing we saw with Lamar in 2023, and like this is what we're seeing in Hamilton in 2023, that like he has to come back down to earth?
With Hamilton, honestly, I think I'd say no. There's no statistical area where Hamilton has been so great that he can't effectively duplicate a lot of what he's doing. And most of what he's doing is of an overwhelming physical nature to start with. It's instincts also, but his ability to patrol the line of scrimmage, it's length that really helps him get off wide receiver blocks and break up wide receiver screens on the side he's on. It's quickness and decisiveness about getting into the backfield on blitzes. He's very slippery as a blitzer. It's not just a speed thing or a deception to him. Not giving away until it's too late for the offense to do anything about it. I look at those characteristics and I say, he's got a lot of things that he's going to carry with him. And it's not like Lamar where I could point to any one of his statistics and say that's just like 36 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. That ain't happening again.
Good points. Moving on to cornerback. In 2019, Brandon Carr, Marlon Humphrey, Peters, Jimmy Smith, and Amon Marshall. Auburn,
the man
right?
who did not exist.
Yeah, right. Auburn guy, is that? I can't. Most of the time I remember where players went, but yeah, he didn't really exist, so it's hard to remember him. In 2023, we got Marlon again. We've got Stevens, Pepe, Williams, Rock Yassin, Darby, another addition of EDC, adding somebody off the street, finding a ton of value in, and Arthur Mollett. To me, it's a wash only because of the depth and the quality of depth we have this year going into the playoffs versus the 2019. In 2019, I love Jimmy Smith. I love Jimmy Smith till his death. I hope he's listening to this and he hears how much I love Jimmy Smith, but you just never knew the availability for Jimmy Smith. You never knew when something was going to tweak, and that was like, shoot, we have a problem. So the depth of what we have with Darby and Mollett, and then adding those pieces to the equation, I'd give a very, very, very slight edge, or call it a wash, slight edge, whatever, to the 2019 or to the 2023 squad.
Okay, I think this is an area that's pretty clearly a 2019 advantage. The First of all, you had 2 all-pro corners. It's almost like doing a disservice to those guys. Just it's a wash between these two. But Peters was a huge component of going down the stretch. The acquisition of him was EDC's crown jewel in terms of what he did that season to put that team together. Marlon was a much better player in 2019 than he has been this year. It's not a matter of Marlon's been very good when he's been on the field this year. It's just a matter of he hasn't been on the field that much, and he's almost in a way become a new Jimmy Smith in that way. So,
and was 2019 when he got the fruit punch nickname? Was that the year he was punching the ball out of everybody? I can't remember the forced fumbles.
I think that was after. I think that might have been 20 or 21, but I'll look it up right now while we're talking.
Yeah, so you're right. The 2 all pros, that's kind of hard to discredit. It's just, I think about injuries a lot, and I think about what can go wrong. And other than the Ravens beating themselves and not being prepared or not executing, I think about, okay, so what else could go wrong? And it's always injuries, right? That's always what can derail anything. So I think I hold a little bit more weight to the depth this year.
All right. All right. Well, very good. And no complaints there in terms of what you're saying. Always love people to be loyal to the current team. I think it is a good one. I also give McDonald a lot of credit for compartmentalizing the scheme, having these people understand what they're doing within a larger scheme. But also, I think it has reduced the role of cornerbacks by playing a lot of two deep, or starting with that and rotating to something else. There is the fear of the back end that exists in every quarterback the Ravens face that has really made the job easier for these wide receivers. I can't imagine anybody being unhappy if you're a cornerback playing in this system. I cannot imagine it.
Yeah.
These guys, and I think it's really helped Stevens have this breakout year, and not that he's been bad. He's a good boundary corner. He does other good things well. Stayed with people, not giving up a bunch of big plays over the top. But he's a guy who I think has also benefited from the scheme.
Yeah, I was literally just about to ask you that question. How much weight do we hold to Stevens' performance based off of the scheme and the deep safeties? And you're probably right. I mean, even if it is more technique and more everything else, like, I can't imagine the amount of comfort that a corner has just knowing that, like, okay, the back end's protected. It's just one less thing you have to worry about or you're afraid of as you're lining up and getting ready for the next route, the next play. So yeah, I imagine that's got to be a piece of the puzzle for sure for Stevens' development.
All right, how about we move on to safety here? Always my favorite position to talk about.
Yep. So safety, Chuck Clark, Anthony Levine, Jordan Richards, and Anthony Trawick. And I think Anthony was more just special teams. I can't remember if he saw the field too much, but I'm sure he got some snaps in there. And that was strong safety. And at free safety, we had Earl Thomas. I'm pretty sure Jefferson was on IR for the Tennessee game. I think he got hurt earlier in the season, but I can't 100% remember.
That's correct. So he had the green dot for
that's right.
He was given the green dot after, Weddle had it for the second half of the first game, and then in Arizona, I think then it went to I'm forgetting exactly how it went, but anyway, Tony Jefferson had it for a period there, and then he got hurt during the Pittsburgh game, I think, and that's when it went to Clark.
Yeah,
and looking at the regular season totals in terms of snaps here, looks like Trawick, he was not on the field for many snaps. 11 total snaps. 11 total snaps, 15 yards. Thomas played 829 snaps. Jimmy Smith had 362 snaps. Peters 544. He was, of course, acquired at midseason. Levine 154, which seems low, but he wasn't the dime back the whole time. Jefferson had 256 snaps. Humphrey 895. Clark 704. He took the green dot over towards the end of the season. And then Carr 692. So they did some rotation. Anthony Averett had 205 snaps that season. So that was something nice too to get another guy started. I don't remember you have him in the list of cornerbacks.
Was he on IR before that? Did he get hurt? 2019 roster.
I can't really tell you if he got. I mean, the 205 is what he played during the regular season. So
I'd have to go back and look.
Let me see if he played it all in the postseason. He did not. So
I thought he got hurt. It's hard to go back and look and see who got hurt when and who was available when. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he was on IR at that point. So back to safeties. This year we've got Geno Stone, Kyle Hamilton, Marcus Williams, a couple practice squad guys as the backups. It's really, really difficult for me to not say that this squad is better, and it could be recency bias. It could be Hamilton, and I love safety play ever since Ed Reed just being an absolute freak athlete and having freak instincts, and but to me it's 2019 all the way.
Okay. I would agree, certainly, in terms of the top talents you mentioned. I think this team desperately needs to find that next safety. I think the loss of Daryl Worley is actually pretty significant for this team, and they need to find a guy, whether it's Adams, Lucien, or somebody else off the street. They have to find. They need one more safety on this team. I don't think it is one of their current cornerbacks. I don't believe so. I know Ardarius Washington has had a little bit of time there. Pepe also during the preseason, but I think it'll be somebody else.
Yeah, I can't see really anybody else making the transition at corner from our current corners to playing in safety. Like maybe you can get by for the rest of a game with Stevens, but it's not sustainable to continue to win in the postseason.
You can't take him out of corner. He's too valuable there. It's not like they have anybody to replace him at that point. So
that's true.
I think they'd be really stuck. Hey, the guy who might it could be Yassine, could be a guy, a very physical player who you could move into a dime back role if you needed to because there's an injury on the inside. It could be Yassine as a guy you could put on the back end. He's much more physical than instinctive, and it would be a learning process for him to go through and read multiple route patterns at once, multiple routes at once to try and figure out where he needs to be on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's still young. He's like in year 5. So, trying to make that transition, that'd be a tall order for sure. So yeah, overall, I think the safety group this year, despite the depth, is just so far superior. And, what we got from Earl Thomas was okay, but it wasn't what we thought we were going to get. And,
right.
Just the talent at safety this year is just superior. So that kind of leads us to the schematic portion of the defense. In 2019, we had a lot of, sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. Dime seemed to be the bread and butter for 2019. A ton of man coverage led to a situation when a run heavy team like Tennessee could, put us in a bad spot, and they did. Henry finished that game with 30 carries for 195 yards, and we just couldn't stop him. Our safeties weren't equipped to stop him. Our linebackers weren't equipped to stop them, and their offensive line got just enough push to get Henry into level 2, and we couldn't do anything about it.
Right.
Yeah.
I have some comparisons to make here, and I've got it by package here in my own materials, but the Ravens played 10.6% base in 2019. They played 3 different nickel looks: a standard nickel, a big nickel, and a jumbo nickel. They didn't play any of the uncovered nickel from that year, and that totaled 46% of snaps. They are at 80 or 81% nickel in 2023. So that gives you an idea of just how little variation in the number of defensive backs that McDonald is using. Dime, and this yes, this does include the playoffs. The dime is a total of 38.3%, but that does not include some quarter packages, which take it up to 42.2%. So that's the number you often hear me quoting on this show, and that includes the dime and the quarter looks. Actually, 3.9% of the time, that 2019 team had 7 defensive backs on the field. So more than I really remembered, but the percentage, the 42.2%, is by far the highest they'd ever had in team history of 6+ defensive backs. 34.5% was a previous record in 2000. So good teams have the ability to build leads and do whatever they want to basically stop the opponent from coming back. And the dime defense and race car packages and other things that you might use are good tonics for that. I will say this: the race car package is between the two of them, they use it 13.2% of the time. The base package only 10.6. That is just a remarkable
yeah, absolutely
difference between those two.
Yeah. I think if we had 7 defensive backs in 2019 for that many plays, or even that little plays, that's probably where Brandon Trawick got all of his defensive snaps, I'm guessing.
He would have had some, but remember Anthony Averett was available earlier during the year,
yeah,
and I know he played in some of those dime packages. So I'd have to go. If you really want to do that, I have to go back and go game by game and look at the sevens. But we're good.
Totally all right.
Yeah.
But I think schematically, with the difference in inside linebacker play that we have this year, I can't imagine anything I can't really see a weakness in this defense like what we had in 2019 that got exposed. You know, one of the other big things that I point to is like seeing Marlon Humphrey in the slot against San Francisco and his level of play jumping up, and it was just a phenomenal game from him. Like the flexibility in personnel and scheme from Mike McDonald to match up against either their offensive personnel or scheme is just absolutely incredible because of the difference in talent on defense that we have this year versus what we had in 2019.
Yeah, patchwork group in 2019. Wonderful job of rebuilding the. I'm hearing some clicking coming from your end. I'm not sure what that is. Okay, but in this case, it definitely is a much more solid schematic defense, I would say, in terms of how they want to play it. They're much more integrated. They do much more to cover for their cornerbacks, which is something that kind of plagued them in 2019, was allowing some big plays from time to time. But honestly, the defense just has way more talent across the board. That 2019 team is a picture perfect way to rebuild a bad defense on the fly. A defense that lost a lot of talent the previous year, and they rebuilt it very quickly when some injuries occurred. And frankly, when the Owasso move to Mike did not work out, that became apparent immediately. And they were decisive and made the move immediately to go to Fort and Bynes and go back to that platoon role on the weak side that really served him so well.
Yeah, incredible job by EDC of just on the fly. And I hate to try to compare EDC to Ozzie because both had incredible strengths, but EDC has really taken the Ravens up a notch in being able to rebuild quickly and efficiently, like last minute in season, right before the season starts. Like there's no shortage of ability to see the weakness and diagnose how to solve that problem and get somebody in that can solve the problem.
Yeah.
So a couple of the stats to point to why I think overall the defense is much better. Tied for first in defensive yards per play in 2023, and in 2019 we were tied for ninth. Gave up 6 rushing touchdowns all season this year, 2023, and 12 in 2019, and tied for first in takeaways in 2023, and tied for 7th in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And
we could add in sacks there if we wanted to, but it's there's no question it's a much better defense. And what's made this team so great from a DVOA perspective is that they're extremely balanced. All 3 units are very good. And none of them have to be the absolute best, although the defense is. The offense is second or third, and the special teams is up there in the top 3 as well. And that sort of balance is a big asset to have going into the playoffs.
Yeah, that makes me think, and I remember in 2023 thinking more about positional matchups as a whole, and this year I've really been thinking about individual matchups as opposed to positional matchups. I remember in 2019, the pass rush has really got to step up this game, or it's going to be a tough game for the linebackers here. And now I'm thinking, well, can Kyle Hamilton just like cover Deebo Samuel one-on-one? And it's like, oh yeah, he can. Wow, that's impressive. So it's very, very different level of talent.
Okay. All right. This is an outstanding topic. We have to kind of cut this off at this point. We've talked about the coordinators, I think, enough as we've gone through the individual things to know. And also, I don't like kind of the notion of bashing the previous coordinators who I think were among the best the Ravens ever had. I mean, let's face it, 2019 Ravens and what they had with I forget. I want to call him Urban, but that's not correct. Previous offensive coordinator. I'm blanking out. But before Monken.
Roman, sorry.
Greg Roman. What he had with Greg Roman was really special, and he is the best Ravens offensive coordinator prior to Monken. And Monken still has a ways to go before he's ahead of Urban, I think, in terms of what he brought to the franchise. But this has been a great start. And in terms of the defensive side as well, Wink Martindale's in the top 3 defensive coordinators the Ravens have ever had. It's Rex Ryan, it's Wink Martindale, and it's Marvin Lewis. And all the other guys who were there for a shorter period, Pagano and Madison and people like that, they just, even Dean Pease, who was there for a longer time, I don't think they're quite as great, even though they were all very good. The offensive coordinator is much more checkered history of not particularly good offensive coordinators for the Ravens. It's easier to find fault with that group. But anyway, I don't like previous coordinator bashing when they've been that good.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, I feel like it's recency bias, which allows us to do that. You know, we look at this current team and how good this current team is, and we look back about any shortcomings the previous team has. So then it becomes an easy finger to point at the single individuals and say like, oh, that's why it didn't work out. And it's really just like, yeah, you just remember the heartbreak and not the 14-2 and record-setting offense. So I agree. I will say though that I think we're leaving off Gary Kubiak off that list,
yes.
And it might not have been a historic offense or anything, but golly, the way he unlocked Joe Flacco that year was just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely, completely agree, and it's very fair to point him out. Sean, really appreciate you coming on the show. First of all, this is exactly what I want in a lot of ways. First of all, discussion is fantastic. Second of all, you're incredibly prepared. If you were looking at what I'm looking at in terms of what Sean sent me in terms of notes for this show, just outstanding. So I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you, man. It was it's hectic. We've got a new 10-month-old in the house, and my energy and sleep schedule are not what they used to be. So I think I put this together in between meetings in a couple hours and figured this would be enough for you. So I'm glad you appreciate it. I'm glad to be a part of this, man. I appreciate everything you do, brother.
Well, you're certainly welcome anytime. Where can people talk football with you online?
Be more Sky High on Twitter. I mean, you know, I don't really care. I'm on there sometimes I'm not. You know, I'm sure they get tagged whenever you post the episode. People can follow or not. It doesn't really matter as long as they're listening to your stuff. It's good content and it's great for the community. So follow me or don't. It's not a big deal.
Okay. Outstanding, Sean. Well, you're welcome back on the show anytime, and I hope you'll contribute both in terms of questions and to the degree you can with other content that is of an interesting nature like this, because exactly what I'm looking for in terms of discussion. Other folks out there, if you're looking to do the same and be on a show like Sean, please hit me up. DMs are always open. You know what it is. If you're a fan of the show and you don't want to be on a show, but you want to do something good for the show, there's 2 things you can do. I don't ask anybody for money, at least not yet, in terms of having paywalls or Patreons or anything. What I would like you to do is introduce the show to one new person. Okay, just somebody who likes football content. You're wearing a Film Study t-shirt there, aren't you?
I'm wearing a Film Study Ravens t-shirt, brother. Of course.
That's great. I wasn't sure before. I thought it was a Ravens shirt, but I was going to ask you about it after we got off air, but that's pretty cool. But anyway, the other possibility is to write a 50-word 5-star review for us. Would really appreciate that. And if you don't mind doing that, that helps the algorithm drive people to our podcast, and hopefully we'll find some new listeners that way. But really appreciate you. Sean, thanks again for coming on.
Thanks for having me, brother.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.